Not surprisingly, an argument by example is an argument in which a claim is supported by providing examples. While they are used in academic contexts quite often, arguments by example are also commonly used in real life. For example, suppose someone wants to show that another person always mooches pizza without offering to help pay for it. The case could be made by listing examples in which the pizza mooch, or in Latin, the pizzicus, moochicus, ate pizza without contributing any money. Now the form of this argument, to go with the strict form, has at least one premise and one conclusion. Each premise is used to support the conclusion by providing, shockingly enough, an example. The general idea is that the weight of the examples establishes the claim in question. Although people generally present argument by example in a fairly informal manner, they have the following general form. Premise 1. Example 1 is an example that supports claim P. Premise N, example N, or premise 2, example 2 is an example that supports claim P. Premise N, we're into some number, example N is an example that supports the claim P, and the conclusion is, of course, the claim is true. So basic idea is that by the weight of examples, the conclusion is established. Now to give a example of this in concrete form, suppose we have the following. Premise 1. Lena ate pizza 2 months ago and did not contribute any money. Premise 2. Lena ate pizza a month ago and did not contribute any money. Premise 3. Lena ate pizza 2 weeks ago and did not contribute any money. Premise 4. Lena ate pizza a week ago and did not contribute any money. Conclusion. Lena is a pizza mooch who eats but does not contribute. And that being an argument by or from example. So again, the basic idea is that one supports a claim by weight of example. Now, how do you tell when you've got a good argument by or from example? Well, the standards of assessment are pretty straightforward. The strength depends on 4 factors. First, the more examples, the stronger the argument. For example, if Lena only failed to pay for the pizza she ate once, then the claim that she is a mooch who does not contribute would not be well supported. The argument would be, in inductive terms, very weak. Second, the more relevant the examples, the stronger the argument. For example, if it were concluded that Lena was a pizza mooch because she regularly failed to pay her share of gas money, then the argument would be rather weak. After all, her failure to pay gas money does not strongly support the claim that she won't help pay for pizza, although it might be grounds for suspecting she might not pay. After all, one might infer also inductively that someone who, by analogy, is not likely to pay for, say, their share of the gas, that's likely to apply to other analogous situations, such as pizza. Third, the examples must be specific and clearly identified. Vague and unidentified examples do not provide much in the way of support. For example, if someone claimed that Lena was a pizza mooch because, she didn't pay in stuff on some days, like that time a month or maybe a couple months ago, that sort of stuff would make the argument rather weak. Fourth, counterexamples must be considered. A counterexample is an example that, amazingly enough, counts against the claim. One way to look at a counterexample is that it is an example that supports the denial of the conclusion being argued for. Now, counterexamples work sort of as, in a way, negative examples. So the more counterexamples there are, and the more relevant they are, the weaker the argument becomes. For example, if someone accuses Lena of being a pizza mooch, but other people have examples of times in which she did contribute, these examples would serve as counterexamples against the claim that she is a pizza mooch. As such, counterexamples can be used to build an argument by example that has as its conclusion the claim that the conclusion it counters is false. So essentially the way to respond to an argument by example, or one way to do it, is to present counterexamples. So in a way to argue against an argument by example is to present another argument by example. So the standards of assessment are those four. More examples, the better. The more relevant, the better. The examples, of course, have to be specific and identified, and of course, the more counterexamples and the more relevant they are, the worse. Now this, of course, provides a way to, again, to respond in your objection and reply section. If you present an argument by example in making your case, the way to respond to that is to attack your own argument by example, perhaps by criticizing it by the first three standards, or presenting a counter-argument by example with counterexamples. Now, obviously, if you're responding to your own argument by example with a counter, you'd want to counter your counter. Now, turning now to how one would argue morally by using an argument from or by example. And here's how to do it. Arguments by or from example are generally not used to directly argue that something is right or wrong. They're most commonly used to argue for a claim that will itself be used in an explicitly moral argument. That is, they are generally used to settle a factual issue, a dispute over a factual claim. For example, suppose that someone is arguing about stem cell research. A person in favor of the research might want to argue that this research is morally acceptable because of all the various benefits it supposedly produces. In order to do this, she would most likely want to argue it has numerous significant benefits by giving examples of these benefits in an argument by or from example. In contrast, a person who is opposed to stem cell research might want to argue that it is immoral because of the harms it would supposedly generate. As such, he might present various examples of significant harms that would support the claim that stem cell research would be harmful. Because of its usefulness in arguing that something is beneficial or harmful, arguments by or from example are often used in conjunction with another method that we'll see later on, which is known as the appeal to consequences. Now, to give a concrete specific example, consider the following argument. Premise 1. Stem cell research could allow doctors to regrow replacement limbs and organs, which would be beneficial. Premise 2. Stem cell research could allow the development of new treatments for disease ranging from diabetes to Parkinson's disease, which would be beneficial. Premise 3. Stem cell research could allow more effective testing of drugs without using animal or human subjects, which would be beneficial. Conclusion: stem cell research could have significant benefits. Now, how do you respond to an argument by example? Well, as I mentioned before, basically the way to attack it is to use those four standards. So, responding to an argument by or from example in a critical manner involves assessing it based on the standards I presented previously and showing how it fails to meet one or more of them. In the case of the counterexample, standard 4, this involves presenting the relevant counterexamples. The overall goal is to show that the examples do not adequately support the conclusion. Naturally, just like with any argument, an argument by or from example can also be criticized by questioning the truth of the premises. In the example given above, the one given previously involving the stem cell research, the gist is that stem cell research could have significant benefits because of the numerous examples of potential benefits. So the idea is, here are all the examples of the benefits of stem cell research, therefore it could have significant benefits. The benefits do seem to be relevant and adequately numerous, so the most likely avenue of criticism would involve the other two standards. First, it might be argued that the examples need to provide more details. To be very specific, what are the likelihoods of actual positive results? After all, people have presented all these incredibly great things that stem cell research is supposed to do, but a good question is, has it delivered? Second, perhaps the best way to counter this argument is by presenting counterexamples to show that such research could be harmful rather than beneficial. For example, people opposed to stem cell research commonly argue that such research would devalue human life, and that would be a counterexample, because obviously devaluing human life would presumably not be beneficial. As with any argument, as I noted, the premises can be challenged. In this example, it would involve presenting reasons or evidence showing that the research is not likely to have the alleged benefits. Naturally, such responses can be responded to in turn, and these can be countered. For example, if it were argued that stem cell research most likely will not lead to the ability to grow limbs and organs, another argument could be given to try to show that it is actually likely that it will have these alleged benefits. This process can go on for quite some time, with example and counterexample, especially in very controversial matters where the facts are not yet settled. But fortunately, the argument from example discussion will not go on, for we have come to the end of the argument from or by example, and next we shall turn to the argument from authority.